we're here to talk to you about sexes. That's our festival. It came to me in a dream about 4 years ago. It was a dream of the best exhibition I'd ever been to that thought about sex and gender from the perspective of everyone's gender, that seemed to manifest a kind of feminism as wide as the species. I walked around the exhibition, I could see the name of the exhibition on the roof, SEXES. It's a palindrome. It rotates around the X. That's sexy. And as I looked for my work, it became evident that I wasn't in the show. And then I thought, eventually, I must be the curator. But I'm not a real curator, I'm an artist. So I took the idea to real curators, and that is how it became a waking dream. My co-curators, Jeff Kahn and Bec Dean.
We really wanted to make this work with Deborah, and we're all very excited about the kinds of ideas that we could bring into play. But what we were really interested in was actually expanding from this idea of an exhibition and actually looking at other art forms. So contemporary dance, performance, all sorts of movies, debates, all kinds of aspects and permutations of art in our culture that we could sort of throw this kind of frame around.
Working on this big sexy beast as 3 curators rather than 1 really allowed us to be very expansive in our approach to the art forms that we were representing, and also the diversity of works in the program, which very quickly became a festival from starting off as an idea for an exhibition. And I think one of the other great advantages and great joys of our collaboration was the multitude of perspectives that allowed to bring into sexes as well. As Deborah mentioned, one of the biggest aims of the project was to expand beyond these binary ideas of masculine, feminine, of feminist exhibitions that were only about women, that excluded certain perspectives. So sexes really contains queer perspectives, straight, gay, lesbian, bi,
men, women and others.
Inanimate objects, everything. And we're really thrilled to be presenting such a diverse program.
I think we've been talking about the festival as being something that is intelligent and yet filled with fun. So we didn't want to do the fun at the expense of important theory and important ideas about not only art practice but about expressions of gender in our culture, and the other issues that are actually really quite pertinent today and going on in the media more broadly. So we wanted to bring a very expansive frame around it, but that we were inviting a multitude of people also to speak within this. So it's not just about our perspectives. There are about 50 plus people involved in this festival that we count as artists and writers and critics and theorists. And it was important for us to actually invite those very active minds into play as well, because we don't know everything and we can't possibly do all of those things ourselves. So we worked with Lex Lindsey, who's a wonderful curator of film, who's been actually working on the Queer Screen Festival for many, many years.
And Cockatoo Island Film Festival more recently.
Yeah, and so we wanted to invite Lex to sort of into, to curate a night of dirty movies for us, but movies that were made by artists and works that he's actually come into contact with through the course of his life as a film curator. Yes. This is an area of practice that I know very little about, and so it was really wonderful to bring Lex in to sort of really draw some interesting work into that frame for us.
At another end of the spectrum, we invited Glory Hole, who are a local queer thrash band, to curate a night of queercore thrash music in the same space. So that, I guess, brought in a whole different group of people who are very actively engaged in gender politics and issues around sex and gender, but engaged with those ideas in a very different way. So that was a super fun night that I would also say was a night of critical discourse in its own way.
Yeah. And in the art exhibition, for instance, we commissioned a major new work from Chidam Idemir, who's a Sydney artist who made a spectacular work that I just did a tour of actually, which is both probably the physically biggest work in the entire exhibition, but which is paradoxically invisible. And it is a work that tries to enliven discourses around the face veil and veiling more generally of Muslim women in Western culture and under the Western gaze. So, and that is a work which is very, very challenging actually, and confronting, and also dead set hilarious.
It is. There's a lovely humour in that work, and I think at the opening night, Chidam actually performed inside the burqa. She was rigged into this gigantic construction, and I don't think anybody noticed at first. And then slowly the rumour of her being present in the burqa spread throughout the crowd, and it became a real favourite on the night.
In the much more intimate circumstance of the weekend in the gallery, we had Maudie Davey re-perform her absolutely legendary 1994 work, My Cunt. Am I allowed to say that? You have. I have. Which remains as astounding, so as absolutely gobsmacking, heart-stopping as it was in 1994 when I have to admit I first saw it. It was so great to be able to commission her to remake that work and to astonish a whole new generation.
I think that is another aspect of the program, is the intergenerational nature of the festival actually.
Yeah.
That it not only is a multitude of perspectives on sex and gender, but it's also artists of different generations coming together into dialogue around the same issues, and multiple art forms being juxtaposed with each other.
I love that. I mean, it really just puts a bit of a lasso around a zeitgeist, doesn't it? I mean, everyone's talking about gender, even the Prime Minister.
It's interesting though, because as much as everybody is talking about gender, it has been critically underrepresented in our institutions, I would say. It's been years since a major arts institution did a critical survey of a significant scale around these issues, and so I think that's...
Except for Goma.
Yes, but that was, limited to women.
Yeah.
I think that's really important for us, because for me, as a curator, and I probably can speak for my fellow curators in this regard as well, is that it's always an important facet of how I'm thinking about curating a program, is about, do we actually walk the talk? Do we actually represent fairly across genders? Do we give consideration to these things? And so I think that it's important for us to also challenge that within our own practice sometimes. It was wonderful to hear Elvis Richardson, who is Countess, talk as part of our Clubhouse event. And she was talking about a blog that she runs, which actually looks at gender parity across government-funded arts organisations, with a particular focus on the visual arts. And it's very clear data. There is underrepresentation of women in publicly funded institutions. And so it's really important for us to address that issue at a basic level, and then to start to think about other things as well that come into play.
So I guess that's a starting point, but it allows us to then think through other things that are perhaps more interesting about how gender is expressed and sexuality is experienced across and between cultures, for instance. So we got to complicate all of the questions that we asked ourselves, and for that it is really amazing to have three heads.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for the three of us as artists and as curators, sex and gender are issues that don't go in and out of fashion in terms of their currency. They're issues that actually underpin everything that we do. And I know as a curator, it's always present in my mind, and it's about bringing that presence to the foreground and creating a platform where we can draw out some of those complexities and create a forum for new audiences to engage with those issues.
And I think we're also seeing, particularly in our focus at performance space, we're sort of reinvigorating a commitment to queer practice, and to sort of thinking about how we can bring work that finds a foothold in the cabaret kind of scene, in the queer cabaret scene, and maybe isn't able to sort of move from that, and to actually give it some give it some more context, give it some more oomph to take it to other audiences and to different sorts of, you know, theatrical or performative levels that it might not have considered before.
I think Sexes is only a project that could have happened with the input of 3 curators, and that has collaboration at its heart, because it's a project that's about breaking binaries and celebrating multiple perspectives and really embracing a sort of diversity of positions when it comes to sex and gender. So I think it's all been a process of discovering for us what those positions are, and sometimes they've been confronting positions, sometimes they've been exciting positions, but I think the collaboration has been what's driven that.
So hard for this to not sound all saucy.
It's very easy to talk double entendre when you talk
It's been double entendre land around here.
Oh, say.
Cool.